If you believe neo-Nazis are welcome and operate in good faith, you can have them. Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and Summer Lee voted for this. Is Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and Summer Lee saying like, we love neo-Nazis? That doesn't make any sense. She doesn't want to look like she's aligned with Marjorie Taylor Greene under any circumstance whatsoever. And she is way too beholden to like the old school woke, the old school woke people that work in these campaigns, that woke as a pejorative, like I mean like rad libs, you know what I mean? People that are like, why would you go on the Joe Rogan Experience type people, which is just like, you need to be a shark. You need to be a shark. You need to be vicious. None of that stuff works anymore. We're in the post-Trump era. Okay? That's it. Fuck the rad libs. Who gives a shit? Marjorie Taylor Greene's amendment does nothing to cut off offensive aid to Israel nor end the flow of U.S. munitions being used in Gaza. Of course I voted against it. What it does do is cut off defensive Iron Dome capabilities while allowing the actual bombs killing Palestinians to continue. I have long stated that I do not believe that adding the death count to the innocent victims of the war is constructive to its end. That is a simple and clear difference of opinion that has long been established. This is a bullshit, an incredibly cowardly way to fucking defend this decision, by the way. It would have been better off if she just said like, I don't like Marjorie Taylor Greene and it's a cynical messaging bill or something. Even then it would have been cowardly for her to not vote for it. But it is ridiculous to say, oh, it's defensive weapons. What do you mean defensive weapons? Who gives a shit? What are we talking about? Everyone at this point, especially someone like AOC, should be aware that Israel gets to fucking literally do as much violence as possible because they know full well that we're always going to be footing the bill on the defensive side, okay? It's not about like letting Israeli civilians die. This is not the case, okay? The point is, if Israel feels like they are left unguarded, okay, or if they feel the pressure from BDS, for example, boycott, divestments, and sanctions on the state of Israel, then they will stop doing genocide. That's the whole point. It is the least violent means of stopping Israel. The argument is Israel will stand down if we stop giving them weapons, defensive weapons and offensive weapons, just all weapons. And it's ridiculous because no one would make the argument, yeah, look, we were only selling Germany anti-aircraft ammo. It was just defensive weapons. It would be ridiculous. That would be a ridiculous argument. How are you this dense? If Israel was limited in defensive weaponry, it would be forced to choose diplomacy and over war to come to the negotiation table sooner. You think it'd be this reckless in Gaza if it knew hundreds of rockets were headed its way? So short-sighted is the case. This argument is an argument that you take if you are still trying to exist in the old world, okay? In the old way of politics. This is pre-October 7 politics. This is Bernie Sanders pre-October 7 being like, well, you know, Israel has a right to defend itself. It's done. That's over. It's especially over for you. This position maybe is not over for like a Kamala Harris, but for you, you're supposed to be the room reader. You're not supposed to be tone deaf. You're not supposed to be tone deaf to the fucking cries of the Palestinians. It's just such bad politics. It is such bad politics. And then to make matters worse, she's also doubling, tripling, quintupling down on like attacking the left, which is only going to draw more enmity because like it's not even a good issue to criticize the left on. Because this is the one time when like liberals are fucking on board with this. You know what I mean? Like the expectation here is for you, knowing full well that this bill is not even going to this amendment is not going to pass, still as a strong advocate for human rights to turn around and say, I don't like Marjorie Taylor Greene, but I think that on this issue, we have to cut off weapons aid to Israel. That's it. Defensive, offensive, doesn't fucking matter. All aid. That's what sanctions are. What are we doing? We're supposed to be advocates for boycotting. We are supposed to be advocates for boycotting the state of Israel, for demanding sanctions to the state of Israel, for demanding divestment from the state of Israel. This is a part of that process. If you can't even do that, then what the fuck are we doing? I'm sorry, guys. This is completely ridiculous. This is way past my fucking red line, especially for someone like AOC, way past my red line. And the reason for why I say this, and I'm just some fucking random commentator, okay? Who the fuck am I, right? I'm just some dumbass. Who cares what I have to say and think on this? But like, this is way past the red line for that reason, because none of these things are are pushed for so we kill Israelis, okay? We push for this so that Israel cannot maintain its current campaign of bloodshed, unlimited bloodshed, because we all know that Israel will stop before it gets to a point where they put themselves in harm's way. One takeaway here is that AOC is way too online. She's getting upset over the narrative among Twitter leftists and hyper-focusing on the bad faith inaccuracies about her rather than the larger problem that she voted against defunding the Iron Dome. Google is free. If you're saying I voted for military funding, you are lying. Receipts attached. Drag me for my positions all you want, but lying about them doesn't make you part of the left. If you believe neo-Nazis are welcome and operating in good faith, you can have them. This, by the way, is the overall package, but she voted against the amendment. And not only did she vote against the amendment to cut off Iron Dome funding to Israel, but then also on top of that, she turned around and defended the position by claiming that this was, a way to stop civilians from being killed. Okay? A way to stop Israeli civilians from being killed. And it's like, that's not the point here. Okay? And also, on top of that, she's throwing her closest allies in Congress under the bus. If you believe neo-Nazis are welcome and operate in good faith, you can have them. Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and Summer Lee voted for this. Is Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and Summer Lee saying, like, we love neo-Nazis? That doesn't make any sense. And Al Green, too. Al Green as well. Is Al Green on board with neo-Nazis? No. Why is Al Green, a long-standing, old Democrat, old school Democrat, why is Al Green on board with this amendment, but AOC is not? Every single person in the Progressive Caucus should be on board with this. Greg Kazar should be on board with this. Every single person in the Progressive Caucus, including AOC, should be on board with this. This is completely unacceptable. It's good politics to be anti-Israel in this day and age. Not only is it moral, but it's also good politics because that's what people want. It is a way to communicate earnesty. That's why cynical actors like Marjorie Taylor Greene take advantage of the lack of interest in the Democrats here and make themselves look like leaders in this movement. Anyone that doesn't read the writing on the wall here is basically still operating on the old guard way of thinking. And you're exactly the same type of person who most likely looked at the Zoran stuff and was like, well, Zoran has to take a wishy-washy position on Israel because he wants to win. He wants to win. It's like, no, that's different. That's a different time and place in politics. We have moved beyond. Think about how much even a little bit of hope, a crumb of hope, can change political discourse in this country. Post-Zoran, think about how every single person has recalculated. You got like the Andrew Schultzes of the world being like, the Democratic Socialists are the only America First party. Like, think about that. How did that happen? How did that happen? How did we get to a position where the Democratic Socialists are seen as like the saviors of the Democratic Party by broad Democrat Party voters and the base of support? The Deborahs, the Barbaras, all of these people have decided that saying fuck Israel does not matter. And now MAGA is dominating the fuck Israel tip. Yeah, Bernie's private messages on Israel was also fucking terrible too. I didn't get a chance to talk about it either, but I mean, look, Andrew Cuomo, here's with audio, okay? Andrew Cuomo is at a Hampton synagogue talking about how he lost because Jews voted for Zoran.
Was a shock to me.
Hold on, I gotta pee.
I never saw it coming, frankly, and I lost, and it's embarrassing to lose, and it hurts to lose, and the way it happened was even worse because all the polls had me up 15 points. And all the geniuses say, you're up 15 points, you want to play it safe, and he was nowhere on the radar screen, Mamdani, just nowhere on the radar screen. So we played it safe. I didn't engage him, I didn't debunk him enough, I wasn't aggressive enough, which is really ironic because all my life I'm too aggressive, I'm too combative, I'm too tough. And then on election day, there was an historic turnout that nobody has ever seen anything like it. there was an explosion of the under 30 vote. Under 30 white socialists who voted 3, 4, 5 times what anyone had ever seen. And that totally changed the numbers. There were about 100,000 young under 30 who had never voted before. I lost by 100,000 votes, 400,000 to 500,000. The young people who came out, they were socialists and they were pro-Palestinian. And I would wager that in that primary, more than 50% of the Jewish people voted for Mandami.
Yep. This is the first time anyone has even recognized that Zoran won the Jewish vote in the most Jewish city after Tel Aviv. Okay? With the largest Jewish population.
More than 50%. Because with those young people, the under 30 people, they are pro-Palestinian and they don't consider it being anti-Israel. I am, as you know, 100% supportive.
No, they do. Plenty do. The difference is they just don't have an issue with being anti-Israel. Because why should they? Why would they? It's a fucking state, dude. It is a state, and it's a Nazi state, as a matter of fact. That's the point. No, maybe in the first couple of months after October 7, there were a lot of people who were like, oh, I just, I'm not anti-Israel, but also I think, maybe Israel is doing some war crimes. But we've pushed past that point at this juncture. We are so far behind.
Israel, I went out and I spoke to that. I spoke to that everywhere. That's my tradition. It was my father before me. I was the most aggressive governor in the United States on behalf of Israel. I was the first against BDS. We did a number of trade missions back and forth. We have the largest Jewish population outside of Israel, and I was proud to be the strongest advocate. But many, especially younger people, don't consider saying anti-Israel is different than being anti-Semitic. Being anti-Israel to them means anti-Bibi's policies.
These guys are playing catch up, okay? This is the broad point, though. Yes, being anti-Israel means being anti-Benjamin Netanyahu's policies. That is definitely the most common attitude. We have a different opinion on this, okay, in this community, and it is important for you to understand that you are still at the cutting edge of this discourse, and people will inevitably arrive at your position, but it does not matter if you want to understand what people's actual attitude is. Yes, there are a lot of people who are fuck Israel, but when they say like, oh, I don't like Israel, I don't like what Israel's doing, they don't have like a real theoretical or real like fully fleshed out ideological disagreement with Zionism being like a fascist ideology. That's not. You have that opinion because you watch me. You have that opinion because you have done at least some level of reading into the matter. It's entirely separate from most people's opinion. Most people just go, why are we giving money to these guys? I don't like it. I don't get it. And also, yeah, this is an incredibly bloody affair. I don't want to be a part of this. And there are a lot more people now that certainly recognize that it's a genocide. Okay? So just understand that, like, you are at the bleeding edge of discourse. Most people's attitude on this is killing is bad, killing children is wrong. I don't like to see dead children. I don't really like it. But my expectation from the likes of AOC, for example, is to read the room and see where the trajectory is for discourse and be ahead of it and be a leader that actually moves people in that direction, because that is beneficial for her in the long run anyway, because people will remember that AOC was in the front lines on this issue, okay? And the fact that she's not there, on this is crazy to me, especially at a time like this when you can say, I'm against the principle. I'm against Israel. I'm against what they're doing, and then and not get punished for it.
Anti-Israel government policies. And they are. And they are. And they were highly motivated, and they came out to vote. And that totally distorted what was expected. And in many ways, it was a national wave that has been building. This socialist wave in the Democratic Party, this AOC, Bernie Sanders going across the country, the No Kings, brought out hundreds of thousands of young people at rallies all across the country, basically fueled by anti-Trump. But anti-Trump then fits with socialism, then fits with pro-Palestinian, and he was the perfect vehicle for this under 30 wave.
I mean, he is incredibly reactionary. Like the No King stuff is like socialist is hilarious. Obviously, like he sounds like a Republican because he is a Republican, okay? Anyway, at Hampton Synagogue this morning, Andrew Cuomo said he didn't debunk Mamdani enough. Cuomo added that Mamdani got more than 50% of the Jewish vote. David Grossman says, assuming this is true, what would it mean if a clear majority of Jewish voters in the most Jewish city in America, in the traditional Jewish party, voted for a candidate who the Jewish establishment orgs told them was anti-Semitic? Hard to think of a more forceful rejection. You don't even need the majority in this situation. Even if you got like 40% or 30% of the Jewish vote, that's still incredibly... That is an incredible, incredible debunking of the fucking narrative that like the Jewish orgs that are invested primarily in defending Israel unconditionally in this time and in this day and age have any sort of real motion amongst the Jewish voter base in the Democratic Party, which remember, the Democratic Party, 75-25 votes. The Jewish vote goes 75-25 historically to the Democratic Party, okay? That's it. So when we talk about the Democrats being 80-20 on giving weapons to Israel or recognizing the genocide that Israel is doing, we're talking about a whole lot of Jews too, okay? That's it. During the primary, I was careful to say what polling showed, that Cuomo had 30% of the Jewish vote and Mamdani had 20%. For Cuomo to claim he lost the outright majority is a pretty huge shift. It speaks to what has been happening gradually over the last decade, now accelerated by Gaza, that Cuomo could even claim this speaks to a Jewish vote that has broken dramatically with institutional Judaism, with Israel as a clear fault line. I mean, dude, look at this community. We have a fuck ton of Jews in this community. Okay? There is a generational split here. I've been saying this since October 7. There is a generational split, and it's not different for Jews either. Okay? That's it. This is not about Judaism. No matter how hard Israel and Israel defenders try to claim that this is all about protecting and preserving Judaism, Israel is the only way to preserve and protect Jews all around the world. That's a lie, okay? No matter how much people wish cast that into oblivion, it is very clear that young Jews, just like everyone else, have seen the death and the destruction and have made up their own minds. And they're like, I don't want this to be a part of my identity. It's perfectly understandable to not want to be associated with a fucking neo-Nazi enterprise like the State of Israel. Tarek Kenny Shawah says, my friend Shabares and El Gindi, Dylan Saba, and Khaled El Gindi, and others have explained at length why the Iron Dome is essential to Israel's shield of impunity. What I find insane is that one could call what Israel's doing in Gaza a genocide and still vote to fund their military in the same breath. If you believe Israel's committing a genocide in Gaza, and that is the word AOC has used, giving even a single dollar to the military committing the genocide is an explicit act of support. Cutting a genocidal entity off from any type of funding / support should be the bare minimum, which is the truth. That is the truth. It is bare minimum. Here's Adam Johnson. As I noted 2 years ago when Dems voted for Saudi defensive weapons, there is no such thing as supporting illegitimate military campaigns with defensive weapons. It makes no sense, and we know this because no one who claims to do so supports giving Russia or Iran an Iron Dome. In November 2021, when Biden White House announced it would sell weapons to Saudi Arabia, it insisted it was okay because they were defensive. A Human Rights Watch report on Saudi death squads targeting Ethiopian migrants shows how those defensive trainings and arms were used. There is no such thing as defensive weapons for a country that is engaging in an offensive genocide, okay? Just like you would never make this advocacy for giving Iran an Iron Dome, there are civilians there. Just like you would never actually make this advocacy for Russia getting an Iron Dome, there are civilians there. Ukrainian drones are pummeling Moscow. You know what I mean? Like, that, how fucking ridiculous. Ironically enough, Israel stopped Ukraine from getting a fucking Iron Dome when Russia was pummeling Ukraine, and Ukraine is our proxy. So get the fuck out of here. From a clinical standpoint, Zoran showed that you can totally avoid spats online by just never mentioning or explaining moderation. When he left his shift on policing unstated, nobody cared. While writers who explicitly said they liked what he was doing got pilloried. When you just avoid bringing up sore spots with your supporters, it puts the impetus on others to start an outrage cycle, which often is perceived as wrecker behavior and pisses people off. But when you light the spark yourself, it gets rid of that barrier entirely. This is a technical argument that that Edinger Mentum is making that is absolutely correct. And the simplest way to do this is never engage with the online left. Just don't do it. So it's double stupid. Not only was her vote on the amendment, the vote no on the amendment was wrong and dumb, but then turning around and consistently elevating like leftist voices that are criticizing you is additionally dumb. You should never do that, even when you're in the wrong, like in this case. Okay? If I was in AOC's corner right now, if I was one of her campaign staffers, I'd be like, please do not, under any circumstance, tweet. Okay? Do not respond. Do not read any of the fucking replies. Just do not respond, because that also elevates the story. That also makes it worse. And I say this as someone who is a leftist voice that constantly gets fucking pilloried by other members of the left all the time. It does not matter. Only time will show your true motivations. And the reality of the matter is, in this circumstance, her true motivations are on the wrong, okay? Not only is it wrong policy, it's immoral, but it's also wrong politically as well. But you should stop tweeting about the left regardless. Of course, not making dumb decisions like funding Israel is the first step here. There's no way out of criticism if your choices don't even make sense from an electoral perspective. But in other areas where there are obvious trade-offs, the critics can often be very inconsistent. Exactly. Like, AOC has called it a genocide before many other members of Congress, okay? Openly on the floor of the Congress. That's important. Okay, that should not be discounted. But this action right here goes directly against that, because this action right here is in the aftermath of other people also arriving at her position, her early position. Her earlier position that it was a genocide is the correct position. So then when you turn around and you're like, but defensive weapons are a necessity because we need to avoid further bloodshed, is ridiculous. I need you to understand something, okay? Politicians are not your saviors, okay? Politicians are politicians. They are our representatives. Sometimes they will represent your interests. Other times they will not. Stop assuming that they're going to save you, okay? They're not going to fucking save you. That's the difference between you and I, is that I see them as a weapon to wield, okay? I don't see them as my salvation. I don't see them as the solution to these problems. I simply see them in an incredibly pragmatic way, okay? I see them as a potential thought leader that can reach out to a much broader audience and get them to also arrive at the position of truth, especially when it comes to Israel conducting a genocide, okay? That's the difference. A lot of you, for some weird fucking reason, think that like AOC is going to be your savior. You think that she is going to be 100% on board with every single thing that you believe. Some of you also think that for Zoran Mamdani, for example. I don't, and I love Zoran. I think Zoran is great, okay? Zoran is a 33-year-old Muslim socialist who is an avowed anti-Zionist, okay? I have never felt as closely represented in American politics until this man. And even then, I understand that there are limitations, okay? I understand that there are going to be moments where I'm at odds with him, where I disagree with him. Use politicians as a jump-off point to organize. Use politicians to create networks of pressure, okay? That's it. No one is coming to save you, China is not coming to save you. AOC is certainly not going to save you. You have to save yourself. You have to organize. That's the point. I understand this reality. Many of you don't. That's the problem. That's why you get you get into this stan culture behavior where you feel like your favorite K-pop star is dating someone that you disagree with. And you're like, oh, I can't believe she would betray me like this. This is not a betrayal, okay? It's only a betrayal if you thought that AOC was like your champion, okay? This is not a betrayal. This is a fucking stupid decision, both politically and on the policy side. It is an immoral decision. Okay? Do you understand?